Hello, Broken Arrow. This is Driving BEA, the Vibe podcast version of Driving BEA. This is Charlie Bright, Director of Engineering and Construction. I'm Aaron McColloch with the communications team here for the city of Broken Arrow. And Charlie, we are here to talk about some outstanding projects. And when I say outstanding, in both just their impact to the community and then the fact that we're still working on them. They haven't been completed yet. And I think it's awesome that we typically hear from you behind the wheel. And now we're going to hear from you behind the microphone to talk about these projects that a lot of work's going on behind the scenes, but people aren't seeing it day to day. And that's a really important part of the construction project life cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity and having the setting to talk about this. I think it is a very important thing to do. If we go to social media, phone calls we get and all those things, I'd imagine 90% of the complaints or questions or items that we get come from projects we're already working on, which is good and bad. I mean, one is the citizens reaching out saying, hey, you really need to do this, you really need to do this, and all that. And it's good to be able to say, like, we understand and we are doing it. And that kind of goes back to that project life cycle stuff we've taken in the past. Like, while, yes, we understand it's bad, we understand it needs to get done, it's a process and it takes some time. But I think it's good to talk about the things that are in that process, where we're at with them and what's going to happen in the future. So
we've got about 20 projects here. Most of them are in the 2018 general obligation bond. One, which we'll start off with, is in the 2014 general obligation bond, and that's Olive Avenue between Kenosha and Albany. Talk about this project, what phase it's in, kind of just to the overview of it.
Yeah, this is a great project. It's one I know the people in the area are looking forward to and look forward to in a long time. Unfortunately, it's taken us this long to get to. Some of that's been in the news or we've posted about in social media as the issues we've had in the past. Ultimately, what's taken us so long to get here, we've had a lot of trouble to acquire the right-of-way that we needed to build the road. Happy to say, though, that our city council and our leadership, we were able to settle that issue with the right-of-way last year, or I guess it was late last year. Able to settle the right-of-way issue, and so we've had the design complete for a long time, waiting for that right-of-way. Now that we have the right-of-way last year, we're going to get the utilities moved out of the way and then go to construction. I hope the construction will be starting sometime next year. It's really hard to lock down a date because on that particular project, we do have some federal funding involved just due to how long it's taken us to get here. And when we do take that federal funding, as you know, we kind of lose control of bidding the project. It's the state of Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. They're going to bid the project for us, but we anticipate they'll get it to bid it next year.
And for those who aren't aware, right-of-way, when you talk about that and waiting to get the right-of-way, what do you mean whenever you say that?
Yeah, it's really important. If we have a 2-lane, 3-lane road, whatever it is, typically you go back and you have what we call statutory right-of-way. I don't remember the year, but years and years ago when the state was first formed, the tribes that had all the area, land in the area came to agreements with the state of Oklahoma to dedicate what they called statutory right-of-way on the section lines throughout the grid of all of Oklahoma. Every tribe actually agreed to a different distance, but the tribes here in Oklahoma, or in the Tulsa County area, agreed to 24.75 feet from the center line of the road. Okay. So both sides of every section line throughout the area, the government has right-of-way for 24.75 feet for a total of 49.5 feet. When we widen a road, a 5-lane road is approximately 60 to 63 feet wide. So that's wider than the 49 feet that we have. So now we need to go acquire more land. That's private property. Somebody owns that. So we have to go get that, ask for that land. We pay fair market value. We go do appraisal processes. We reach out to the property owners. Typically, we ask for approximately another 25 feet beyond what we have, depending on the situation. And that's just a process. We try to be fair. We try to take the time. We go to every single property owner, and typically it takes us between 6 months to a year to just get through that process. For this particular project, it took a lot longer. There were some struggles, but we eventually got through it.
And you said the design is done on this one?
Yeah, we had the design done several years ago before we went through all the right-of-way process, because typically it's done before the right-of-way, so we know how much right-of-way we need. There were some things that have changed over the time period of how long it's taken us to get the right-of-way. So we are tweaking a few little things, but we're 90% done. We just got to button up a few things. But that'll be done pretty easily while we're working on finishing the utility relocations and stuff.
Perfect. I won't ask you for a timeline as far as construction is concerned because there is a public bidding process. And as you said, this is one of those that's out of our hands because it's with the state now.
Yep.
But typically you've got a public bid process where the advertising window stays open for about a month, I think it is. And then you have to go through the bids to see who has the lowest responsible bid and make sure that it's financially feasible as far as being good stewards of the people's money. So still a little bit of ways to go on that, but it is definitely getting much, much closer.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that at a minimum by some point next year, we'll be under construction.
Oh, that's fantastic news. All right, let's move over to 2018 bond projects. New Orleans Street between Garnett and Olive. What's going on there?
This is a great project. As you know, every bond vote we have, we got a limited number of funds. This project was kind of right on the borderline of that 2018 bond of whether it was going to make the bond or not. Ultimately, the construction dollars from this did get cut, but we knew it was right there on the cusp of one of the ones that needed to be widened. And so what our leadership did, which I think was an excellent idea, they put the design funding in for this project to basically ensure that we moved forward, we designed the road, we had it ready. So when the next potential bond vote came, this would be one of the first projects on that bond. And that's exactly what we're planning on doing. We've started the design, working on designing improvements from, as we said, Olive to Garnett, right there on 101st, where our Rose West Dog Park is, the Creek Turnpike Bridge, all that kind of stuff. Doing improvements in that area. We hope that we will have the design done, hopefully by about the time we get to our bond vote next year. And we anticipate that the construction dollars for this project will be one of the primary projects in that bond vote. So we're excited about it. We think it's important. We know there's a lot of congestion in our area. I know what we get calls about a lot, and I'm sure you answer all the time, is actually the Garnett section right there.
I was going to ask you, does this design include the intersection there at Garnett?
No, so Tulsa County's taking care of the intersection.
Okay.
So the section we get the calls probably about the most, even before our road, is the Garnett section. And I think it's important. Some citizens know, some don't. I think it's important to understand that agreements were made a long time ago that where the city's a butt in the Tulsa County area, the county is responsible for the road. So that is the border boundary between Broken Arrow and Tulsa. And so Tulsa County is responsible for the boundary road. Sometimes that creates challenges because, city of Broken Arrow, city of Tulsa are growing. We're growing to the point that we've come together in most areas. And people don't understand that right there in the middle, you got a county road that makes it a little bit more challenging. But the county is taking care of it. Their design's done. We know they're going to construction soon. I don't know their exact timeline, but they plan on going to construction to widen Garnett soon. And the intersection is part of their project, which will be exciting because we also know that there's water issues at overtops in the area, and they're going to take care of all that. And once they're done, we hope to be moving down and widening New Orleans for our section. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Houston Street between Garnett and Olive. This is a current construction project. It's looking good. Tell us about it.
Well, the thing we talk about the most probably is that closure at the intersection. I hear about it a lot. First, I'd just like to apologize. I know it's a difficulty on the people that live in the area, and we don't take that lightly. We actually have a policy in our department that we try to never shut down an arterial road. That's just not our goal. We want to make sure we're always leaving traffic open. Some circumstances are just, we can't make that work. It's just impractical. The conditions around that intersection made it impractical. We shut it down. I know we originally told the citizens we'd be opening back up, I think about now, but as we all know here, we've had unprecedented spring and rainfall. So unfortunately, we had not been able to do the amount of work that we thought we'd be able to do in the time period. So the extensions happened a little bit longer than we anticipated. But we are happy. They're getting pretty close within the next couple of weeks of opening up the section that they've closed down. And then they're going to flip and close down the other side and work on that section on the north side. The nice thing is that when they flip and move to the north side, we're getting out of the rainy season, so weather shouldn't be as much of an issue, we anticipate. And I really hope, and I anticipate it'll go a lot faster getting through there. But overall, the project's going really well. When they've had the dry periods, the contractors made a lot of progress. You drive down there, you can see the curb and gutters are all done. They've actually been pouring asphalt over the last several days. So they're almost done with that south side of the road, and we're going to switch traffic over to the south and start working on the north side. I anticipate construction being done right around the end of the year this year.
How many lanes, sidewalks, that sort of thing?
Yeah, great. So it'll be a 5-lane road. So the nice thing is when we're done, we're creating that corridor that we've talked about all the way from 169, the Tulsa area, and getting all the way to the Broken Arrow on that corridor. It'll be a 5-lane section that continues from Tulsa's 5-lane section. And then the good news, I'm sure it's where we're going next, is once you get to the next mile, We'll also be doing 5 lanes from Olive to Aspen. So we'll get you all the way from Tulsa and the Highway 169, into the heart of Broken Arrow, 5-lane section. And it'll put a lot of relief, because you think about it, the roads that you got on both sides, you got Kenosha and you got Washington, which is both 5 lanes, both very, very busy roads with a lot of traffic. And Houston was kind of in the middle as a 2-lane section, and it was kind of a bottleneck. You want to go faster, you're going to go one way or the other to either Washington or Kenosha. Now that we're going to have that 5-lane corridor coming into town, you're really going to balance that out a lot better. It'll probably put some relief on traffic on the other 2 arterials. Overall, it's just going to be a much better situation.
I hadn't thought about that. The relief on the on Kenosha and the relief on Washington once this is done.
Absolutely,
that makes all the sense in the world.
Well, if you're coming from the Tulsa area, trying to get home to Broken Arrow, those people know, they drive it every day. They know which paths they're going to get delayed on the most. And traditionally, you probably didn't go down Houston a lot because you were going to get delayed at the intersections coming up to Garnett and coming up to Olive. You're going to have pretty significant delays. Well, this first project is taking care of the intersection at Olive, and then Aspen's already improved for the intersection. So when we're done, you won't have that delay. I remember driving it, because I drive home in that direction. I remember driving it and seeing, you could be backed up half a mile, 3/4 of a mile getting that intersection. We're done. Those backups aren't going to exist anymore. So now all those people that have avoided getting in that line are going to get off of Washington, get off Kenosha, and now they're going to come over to Houston. And it kind of just, it adds improvement to all 3 sections, no matter which route you're taking home.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned it just a second ago, Houston between Olive and Aspen. That's obviously the east mile when we refer to that 2-mile stretch there. Talk about that phase, just where it is as far as the project life cycle and the widening, how many lanes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we worked on both these miles at the same time. We don't want to ever put them in construction at the same time for various reasons. But from a design perspective, a planning perspective, we worked on them at the same time. The east mile's nearly ready to go. Due to the way we phased it, we had the utility companies move on the mile that's under construction first, and then they went to the next mile. So we've already acquired all the right-of-way. We've moved almost all the utilities. I think there's a couple of little ones that need to move that aren't very significant, and the design's ready to go. So we anticipate taking that road to construction almost as soon as the other road ends. So we actually are hoping, we talked about that bid process, how long it takes to get to bidding, getting a contractor, getting things under contract. We actually anticipate going into the bid process before construction ends on the other mile. We also think that'll help give us probably some more competitive pricing for the citizens, because we already have one contractor out there that might be hungrier just to keep their equipment out there, and then the other contractors are going to know that and they'll have to compete on their bids. So I think it's a win for the citizens, and I think it'll get us under construction on the next mile faster.
There's a lot of strategy that goes into this, isn't there?
Yeah, you wouldn't always know it from social media posts, but we put a lot of thought into what we do, and everything's done for a reason. So
that's fantastic. 9th Street, also known as Lynn Lane, also known as 177th East Avenue. I don't know if there's a 4th or 5th name out there, but at least 3 names on this. So Lynn Lane between Washington and Houston, and then let's go ahead and just stick with Lynn Lane, Washington to New Orleans. It's that 2-mile stretch there. What phase and timelines and widening, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's very similar to the other section we just talked about. We worked on both these miles kind of at the same time. Both of them have designs completed. We are both going into the right-of-way acquisition phase. So while we've made a lot of progress, there's still a little ways to go because the right-of-way takes some time, and then our utility companies aren't going to move until the right-of-ways do. What we do know, and just similar to the conversation we had about Houston and Olive, if you take that route home, the people that live in that area, the details don't matter to them. They know that it takes them an extra 30 minutes to get home because that intersection slows them down, particularly the one at Lynn Lane in Washington. We know that, they know that, and so we've done everything we can to move that piece forward faster. And so because
the intersection piece?
Yeah, absolutely. Because of the difficulties of getting right-of-way on the whole mile and moving utilities on the whole mile, we actually made the decision, our leadership made the decision to go ahead and acquire the right-of-way at the intersection of Washington and Lynn Lane, and the utilities are actually out there moving right now. So we're trying to later this year to actually start going to construction on just the intersection. That's not going to do all the improvements that we want on Lynn Lane, but what it's going to do is it's going to speed up that drive home. It'll be difficult during the construction process, but those delays of 15, 20, 30 minutes at the intersection will disappear.
And we've talked about this before, but for those who haven't seen some of your comments in the past and how you've described how intersections can actually mitigate some of that congestion, just tell folks again, just kind of the philosophy and the work that goes into these intersections.
Yeah, traffic is an emotional issue for a lot of people, which I understand because,
we all want to get to where we want to go.
Absolutely.
Quickly.
And when you're sitting there, when you have a family at home or somewhere you need to be, a task you got to do, it feels very emotional and personal when you're sitting and just waiting and not moving, and so it's an emotional, it has that emotional response. And a lot of people assume, hey, just widen my road and everything's fine. Well, yes, that does help from a big perspective, but actually what helps you get home the fastest is intersection improvements. At the end of the day, you might go slower on an arterial road because you're behind a slow driver and you can't get around them, but you're not getting delayed 10 minutes, 15 minutes from a lack of a widening on a road. You are getting delayed 10, 15, 20 minutes because of a lack of improvement at an intersection. Because it's at the end of the day, traffic and the problems with traffic all come down to turn movements. You get delayed because of somebody making a turn or you personally making a turn. And when the intersection's not improved, and some intersections will have the no left turns or whatever, and some people are out there honking their horn because somebody's going to try to take the left turn, and everybody behind them is waiting when it happens. So if we can widen the intersection, get the dedicated turn lanes, get the protected left turns on the signal, everything else, it operates much faster. More people get through the intersection per minute, and ultimately you get rid of those delays. And so that's the goal. We understand it's a problem today and people don't want to wait. So our goal and our priority has been to get that intersection improved as fast as possible. And then we'll come back and get the miles improved as well. The miles aren't far behind. We are in the right-of-way acquisition process, and then we'll move utilities as soon as we can. But we're going to get the intersection done first.
Now, those miles, they'll be separated into two different phases as well. They won't be done at the same time. Is that right?
Absolutely. We'll definitely do it as two different ones. I can't say for certain which one we'll do first. I tentatively, the reason I don't say is because one of them's got a railroad involved. Logic would say we would actually build the northern mile first because we've already widened from Kenosha to Houston. So you got a 5-lane section, continue that 5-lane section from Houston to Washington. The problem is that's the section that's got a railroad crossing in it. And most people probably don't realize this, but getting a permit to cross a railroad is extremely difficult. It'll slow down a project significantly. So I do think depending on what our process and our permit looks like with the railroad, which we're already working on, we're working with them, but depending on what that timeline looks with the railroad, we may choose to go ahead and do the southern mile first, which would be Washington to New Orleans, just from a timing perspective. But if we can get that railroad permit crossing, we would like to do the northern mile first.
Perfect. Houston Street. We're going back to Houston Street, but this time we're going to go a little further east, and this is basically from Lynn Lane to Highway 51. We got, about a mile and a half, just short of 2 miles there. 2 phases, 1 phase. How is this one going to work?
Yeah, similar to the other corridors we've talked about, we try to split it up. It's not ideal to be doing projects through multiple miles. It just gets very spread out to where it almost is treated like 2 different projects anyway. And there's challenges on both sides. So we've split this one up just like the others. We're going to approach it where the first project is Houston from County Line to Highway 51. It's less than a mile in that section because you kind of got the angle of Highway 51 there. And that one, we're pretty far along. The design's nearly complete. We don't have very much right-of-way acquisition due to most of one side being already developed. We got that right-of-way when the developer came in, built the neighborhood and everything else. And so, and there's very little utility conflicts, actually. So we're already working with utility companies to get out of the way. And then we are anticipating we'll probably get into construction early next year. So the section from County Line, Highway 51, probably we'll get improvements next year on it, and we're excited about that. The next mile, Lynn Lane to County Line, it's a difficult issue. You got the industrial areas around there. You got a lot of heavy truck traffic. The condition of the road's really poor, and we know that. We tried to put off doing anything with the condition of the road, knowing that the construction was coming of a new road. But there's some challenges in the construction of the new road. So actually, I think this summer we're going to go ahead and resurface that mile just so the citizens aren't dealing with the condition. I mean, it's bad, and we know it is. So due to how long it's going to take to get to new construction, we made the choice to go ahead and resurface what's there today. But that doesn't mean we're not making progress on the mile. We are going to widen it. The challenges there are few. One is just the narrow width of the lanes that you have today, but then two, and more importantly, is the channels that you have on both sides of the creek as you get to the eastern side of the mile. When dealing with roads and channels and everything, there's different classifications of a channel. A normal ditch, creek, whatever, is not a big deal. We can just cross it, put a pipe in. But then you have what you call blue line streams is the short answer. What a blue line stream means is that it's a USGS recognized stream, and that means that it is under the it's under the guidelines of the federal government, and so it's a protected waterway. Unfortunately, it's not a stream with a whole lot of water. I wouldn't consider it that way, but the federal government does classify it as a navigable water, which means that it's under certain guidelines and rules that we have to follow, and it makes it a lot harder for us to do the construction. A lot of times with roads, it's not the biggest deal because it's usually just a crossing. You know, like I come up across the creek, we'll get a permit, we'll do what we need to do, we get over it, and it's fine. This one is extremely challenging because that blue line stream is running parallel to the road on both sides of the road. So how do you widen a road that gets into a federally regulated creek on the side? It's not an easy answer, and it's not necessarily an answer that we can just say this is what we're going to do. The Corps of Engineers gets a lot of say in that situation. They're going to tell us what we can and can't do, and so we're kind of going through that process right now. Our goal is twofold: one, avoid it as much as possible, and then two, we got to work with the Corps when we can't avoid it. So we know due to those challenges, that one takes a little longer. So we've made the choice to resurface the road, and then we're going to get to construction as soon as we can.
So it sounds like when the federal government gets involved, there are quite a few hoops that you have to jump through.
Yeah, things slow down. There's more environmental. We have our own standards, rules, and operations of how we operate at the local level. The federal government, as everybody knows, they have a lot more standards, a lot more rules. And when they get involved, we gotta play by their rules. So there's a lot more environmental studies, a lot more classifications, a lot more permits involved, and every permit has to have multiple people review it and everything. So it's just, I wouldn't say it's difficult, it's just time consuming. And so we got to take those steps and go through those steps, and then when we're done, we can build a road.
Let's move a little north. 37th Street or 209th East Avenue between Omaha and Dearborn, which is 51st and 41st Streets. What's going on there?
Yeah, this is part of that same bond package. We're excited to widen it. You know, we hear from the citizens a lot in the northeast part of the community. You know, you look at a map, and I don't know if everybody on the south side knows this, but it's a busy area out there. You get to the northeast, it's fully developed residential. It's just probably one of our densest areas of just houses everywhere. Not a lot of commercial, but just residential. And what happens when that happens in an area is those peak traffic times are difficult. You know, you don't have the all-day traffic of just constant movement because you don't have a lot of commercial out there. There's not a lot of reason people are driving there during the day, but those peak hours get difficult. And so we understand that. And we're trying to improve the roads out there as best we can. This particular mile, we are working on it. The design, it's another one that's in that process because a lot of them are there because, you know, we're in that timeline of 2018 bonds, been a little while. We've made a lot of progress. Kind of the same as the others. Design's done. We're working on getting into that right-of-way stage and then coordinate with utility companies to get out of the way. This one's interesting, I believe, because it's got a unique challenge with the school there, mid-mile. I believe it's Liberty Elementary.
I think you're right, Liberty.
Yeah, so it's challenging because Liberty's designed in a way that's not like all the schools. You got one entrance, one exit right there. And so one thing we're really trying to figure out is once we're ready to go to construction is when are we going to do construction, because there's a chance that we could impact the school in a way that, you know, hurts their operations. And so normally that wouldn't be as big of a deal because you might shut down one area, one lane or whatever, and may leave them another way into the facility. But that particular school's got one way in and one way out. And so if we shut that down, you know, they have no way to operate. So that one's going to have some challenges. We may have to approach it to where we absolutely do construction in the summer for that portion or something else. So we got a lot to think through, but we're in the stage of getting the right-of-way done, moving utilities, and then we'll get to construction. It's always hard to give timelines when you do that because I don't control the utility companies, and I can't always promise how fast right-of-way is going to go with all the property, neighboring property owners. But I would anticipate we're within a couple of years of construction.
And the fascinating thing about this street, once it does get widened, you've pointed this out before, is that now that corridor from 41st Dearborn all the way through to Houston, 81st Street, just on the north side of Highway 51 there, all of that will have been widened within the last, I'm trying to remember when the new road was put in there, 209th between Albany and Omaha.
Yeah, it was right about 5-6 years ago.
I think so.
But to your point, from this bond, and really, yeah, most of it came from this last bond, all the way 41st to 51st, we're going to improve as this project. 51st to 61st, a brand new road that wasn't there before, 3-lane section. And then just this last year, we completed 61st to 71st. Probably that same time period, 6-7 years ago, we completed 61st to over the highway. And then you kind of go around the curve, and then we're working on Houston Street once you get around the curve. And so we talked about the density of that residential up there, and then we're going to have that corridor complete. If you live in that residential area, you got the corridor to get all the way back into the heart of Broken Arrow with improved roads and much less traffic delays than what you had before.
Much less traffic delays than what we've had before is a great way to describe the next project, and that's Aspen between Tucson and Indian Springs. This is it. I'm excited about this. I've spent a lot of time out at Indian Springs with my kids playing soccer and that sort of thing, and I know there's a lot of people in the community that are really excited to know that this project is starting this summer.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm always checking the social media posts and everything else, and there's still a lot of people that don't know that we're coming up on construction on this. We still get the comments of, when are you fixing this? When are you doing it? The good news is we're starting. We're starting now. The contract's already been awarded to start on the intersection at Jasper and Aspen, 131st. And we're going to complete, as we've already talked about in this podcast, is we're going to completely redo the intersection. It's going to get people through faster. And we're also going to resurface and improve the road all the way south to Indian Springs. And that'll be all part of this first package. We anticipate bidding out the Tucson and Aspen intersection later this year. So both intersections will probably be under construction going on at the same time with a little bit of overlap. And then as those intersections wrap up, we'll be ready to bid the mile in between, 5-lane section. We talk about the corridors. This is great because at that point, basically all of Broken Arrow city limits, Aspen Street will be a 5-lane section. And we're talking from 51st Street, Omaha, all the way down to Indian Springs past Jasper. It'll be a 5-lane section, improved corridor. Every intersection is improved, at least 5 lanes. So we'll be getting vehicles through a lot faster. I know it's a challenge for Indian Springs people, like you mentioned. I've heard. I haven't had kids play out there in a long time. I think the last time I dealt with it, I was playing out there. Yeah. But I've heard and I've seen it's pretty bad when the big weekends happen. But it's bad just for peak hours for the people who live out there.
That's right.
And those delays will mostly disappear once we're done with this. I'm excited, and the timing couldn't be better because we recently announced Home Depot coming in at the intersection at Tucson and Aspen, along with several other stores, Hobby Lobby, and more that you can name than I can. But the commercial side of that area is growing a lot, and there's more to come, and it's glad to know that before all that commercial comes, the roads are going to be improved. And so we're working on it and excited to be getting it done.
And I don't think it's on this list, but staying right there, just a quick recap of what's happening on Tucson between Aspen and Olive. Since you mentioned the commercial corridor there of Hackberry Market, there's some things that are happening there at the shops of Aspen Creek, just a little further east. We're doing some work on Tucson right now between Olive and Aspen.
That's a great point. One of the things that I probably hear the most about is actually the intersection at Olive and Tucson. That we need a signalized intersection. We need wider lanes. I know trucks have difficulties making those turns, so I hear a lot about that. But then I also do hear about Tucson itself between Aspen and Olive and some potential developments that have gone through the zoning process, want to come in there, and just how bad traffic is. I am excited to say it was not part of the bond package, but very similar to the New Orleans Street that we chose to design in anticipation of the next bond package. Our leadership, my team, we made the decision to go ahead and start design on that road as well because we know it's going to be a road that's going to have an issue soon. And it's what you see citizens comment of, build roads before there's a problem. In a perfect world, we do that all the time. Sometimes we can't always anticipate. This one, we see it coming. It's on the horizon. We know traffic's about to increase even more. And so we're designing it now before that commercial development comes in. with the anticipation that we'll get those construction dollars in the next bond vote, which, leads into, I think it's all the while more important that, citizens just show up to vote on these bonds, whether it's yes or no. Just understand that vote and those bond packages is how we take care of projects like this. If we don't have those bonds, then we aren't able to do these kind of projects in the city of Broken Arrow. Sales tax does not generate enough money that you need to do stuff like this.
So. That's right. Washington Street, from Lynn Lane to County Line Road, and then the intersection there at County Line in Washington. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, so this is it's an interesting mile. It's going to be a difficult mile, but it ties on to what we already talked about. The improvements at Washington and 9th Street, Lynn Lane, the intersection. We're trying to get to that intersection as fast as possible because that's some of the most significant delays we probably have anywhere in the city right now.
Is that one signalized? I can't remember.
It is, but it's 2 lanes in several of the directions. Okay. So it's what we talked about, that turn movement. If you get a driver at the front that wants to turn left, your peak hour, you got full vehicles coming the other direction. I hear the complaint often, sometimes people will wait 3 cars back through 3 light cycles because the person at the front doesn't turn left. Mm-hmm. And so it is, but it's a challenge because of the lack of dedicated left turn lanes. And it'll be signalized in the future, but we'll have more lanes, we'll have protected turns, and we'll get people through there. So the intersection's happening soon. We expect to go to construction very soon on that. But the mile for Washington going east to County Line, it's a little bit more challenging. We are in the design process on that one. We're not done on the design. And so we're still early in that process, I would say. And as we've talked about several times, once we get through the design, then we'll have the right-of-way stages, we'll have the utility coordination. So we still are a little ways out on that Washington section. What's going to make that particular project especially challenging is the intersection at County Line. If you were following social media and you've seen all the rains that we've had recently, the record rainfall we've talked about, there was a few days in those rains that intersection was completely under probably more than a foot of water. And that's the challenge, is that it's not that that's unknown or we didn't know that happens. That intersection's in the floodplain. On the 100-year flood event, it is significantly underwater. And that's just the standards that the roads were built to back then. But at the standards that we build them to today, we wouldn't allow that. We don't allow for a road to overtop in a 100-year event. And so for us to get that intersection done, it's going to be a significant amount of work, and it's going to be very expensive.
And not something that's done overnight.
No, absolutely not. And so we're working on the design phase of all that, and then we're going to have to come up with just seeing how expensive it is and then make sure we got the funding and take care of it. But it's a challenge because that entire intersection and all 4 properties around it are in the floodplain. And we're going to make it difficult on the properties around it because for us to get it out of the floodplain, we're going to have to raise it up in the air. And if a road moves 5 feet in the air, now you got a problem with the adjacent properties. How does water get from one property to the other? How do you connect your driveways? And so it's going to be a challenging area.
That may be a podcast for another time.
Yeah, we could talk for an hour on just that.
That sounds pretty in depth.
Yeah.
That's something that the layman, people like me, just don't ever think about.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's unfortunately it's going to be one of the more expensive intersections for Broken Arrow to fix, but it is on the list and we're working on it and we'll come up with a plan to get there. But that one's not expected anytime in the next year or 2.
Headed back over to Aspen, Kenosha to Albany. And this is already 5 lanes, so not doing a widening here, but what's in store for this?
No, this is just kind of support of the rehab money that, we need. There's a few things you do in roads. For a community like ours, a lot of our projects are widening roads because we're growing so fast. We go to those edges of town, a lot of residential development coming in, the commercial development's growing, we're widening roads. But the flip side of that is take care of the roads you got. Nice thing is when you widen a road, especially to 5 lanes, usually that's adequate to take care of that road well into the future. A community like ours doesn't get a lot of 7-lane roads or other types of styles. So once we get a road to 5 lanes, then it's just rehabs and repavements and stuff like that in the future. But that's exactly what this is. Aspen Street Aspen Street was one of the busiest corridors for a long time, many decades. And this was widened to 5 lanes many decades ago. And the pavement's rough and it's in rough condition. And so this is just a project to come in and resurface it. We'll mill up all the old pavement, get new pavement down, and have a nice smooth driving surface. And that's really all there is to it.
Do you anticipate that one happening soon? I thought I remembered seeing something somewhere that.
Yeah. Due to how funding plays out, this is another one that we're going to use federal government dollars on it. It's in the bond, but it's just it's a way for us to move other widening projects faster using the bond money, and we're going to use the federal government money on that portion. So it'll be ODOT that bids it, but I think we'll probably be able to get to it next year.
Okay. I'm going to move around just a little bit here because we've got 3 projects that are all kind of tied together with a much more significant project. And so let's talk about Elm between Kenosha and Highway 51, and then the 2 intersections on Lynn Lane at Kenosha and Hillside. What's the story on those? And just talk about that much bigger project that they're part of.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, if I live in the area, those are probably areas I think about the most because it is our highest traffic counts in the area. I think we're over 30,000 vehicles a day at a lot of those areas, which is the busiest part of town for Broken Arrow. I mean, that's pretty significant. I am very excited, and if voters are paying attention, which I know many of them are, they know this was on the bond, so they're like, hey, what are you doing? But we've made the decisions to take that money and invest it into a bigger project. We made the decision to do is we applied for what was called a RAISE grant for many years from the federal government to ask them, and we got denied several times actually. But eventually, like 2 years ago, we finally got accepted. We worked with them. We asked them what they were looking for. We got accepted. We got a grant from the federal government for planning for all of these areas that we're talking about. That includes the Elm Corridor from Kenosha to Albany. It includes the Lynn Lane Corridor from Kenosha to Hillside, I believe, maybe all the way to Albany. Kenosha itself throughout that area. It includes Aspen down around the Broken Arrow Expressway. It's just a planning grant for how do we move traffic and people and bikes around the Broken Arrow Expressway. And that planning grant allows us to take it up to a 60% design set. And so when you talk about the scale of how much money we're spending, just for an example, that grant alone is in the $6-7 million range, and that's just for design services. So I am excited. These things projects of this scale don't move fast. They take a lot of time, and they take a lot of planning, but I am excited that we are moving towards something that is going to give us improvements in that area that actually make a meaningful impact to the way traffic moves, and it stops those delays. Ultimately, what's going to happen with these bond dollars, though, now is we are anticipating saving them to be our match money as part of a future grant. The way the federal government rolls these grants out, they give you a planning grant, but they don't give it to you unless they anticipate giving you a construction grant because they're not wasting their money on a planning grant for something that never happens. So
if you get planning grant money, there's a very real possibility you're going to get construction money. Then
it is anticipated you will get the construction dollars.
That's fantastic news.
Yeah, so it's we talk to them regularly, the people that issue the grants. The expectation is once we're done with the planning, we will get a construction grant. Those grants are typically an 80-20 match, and so I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think we're in the $10 to $15 million range that we had on our bond for these 2 projects. But we anticipate that the overall project to redo these interchanges around the Broken Arrow Expressway could be in the $50 to $70 million range. Well, if you run the numbers, we got about 20% of that. So it's perfect because a lot of these grants are 80-20 matches. So we'll put up our money as the 20% match, potentially get 50, 60, 70 million from the federal government and be able to tackle those intersections in a way that completely redoes the interchanges. So people are getting on and off the Broken Arrow Expressway in a faster manner, and once they get off, they're getting out of the area in a faster manner. So you're just not getting those delays anymore. It's going to be really exciting for the community when it happens, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get there.
Yep, take some time, definitely. One of the roads that we hear a lot about, county line between Albany and Omaha, and there's a bridge in there. Let's talk about that project.
Yeah. So kind of when we started, we talked about ODOT, State of Oklahoma, taking over projects, federal funding. This one falls back in that category. We're actually done with the design. We are done with the right-of-way. We just acquired our last piece of right-of-way, I think, a couple months ago, and most of the utility companies got out of the way. So we're nearly ready to go, and we're going to turn the project over to the State of Oklahoma, ODOT, to bid the project. We also talked about the not the red tape, but the rules of bureaucracy that comes with it when federal government's involved. And so one of those things is more environmental studies and all that. The State of Oklahoma is actually right in the middle of the process of finishing their environmental study. And as soon as they're done, they're gonna bid out the project for us. So we're excited to get that one widened. Anticipate that going out next year.
And we hear from folks time to time just north of Omaha and 51st Street there on County Line Road. That's not our jurisdiction, correct? Is that one of those shared roads with the county?
Yeah. So you're right. We actually hear about two things at that intersection. We hear going west,
That's right. Yep.
Omaha from Elm to County Line, and then we hear going north, County Line itself, Omaha going north. Our jurisdiction ends at County Line in Omaha.
Okay.
And it goes back to what we talked about on Garnett. When those city limits abut, the county takes over the road, and that's the ownership that's been had for many, many years, decades. And so that's right there on Omaha is where the city of Broken Arrow and the city of Tulsa abut each other.
Okay.
And so the county's got the roads in between. We do understand, and we hear often, that people want us to fix Omaha from Elm to County Line, and we know it's in terrible shape. It's not our road. We do know the county has got their own projects going on, just similar to Garnett. They have designs finished for especially the Lynn Lane to County Line portion, and they are anticipating going to construction on that portion soon. I don't know their timelines, but I know they're anticipating that soon. And they're actually going to put a roundabout in at 51st Omaha and County Line. So it'll be exciting to see when they get their project done. But ours is going to be going forward next year.
Coming back this way, central part of the city, Dallas Street between Main and Lynn Lane. This is one of those entryways into the Rose District. What's happening there?
Yeah, so this project was named on the bond. I think it's a good one. It's an interesting challenge. We've talked about it openly in the council. I'm sure if anybody watches, they can see the discussion. We've looked at options of what to do because roads like that are an interesting category. On one hand, it's a residential road. There's people that live there, and that's just their road, their home.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. But on the other hand, it's one of the primary traffic count roads to get people into the Rose District. And so, how do you balance that from a design standard? You widen the road? Do you put boulevards in there? Do you do those things? That makes for a nicer entrance in the Rose District, but it's also just somebody's home. If somebody lives there. So we've gone through the process of trying to balance what that looks like to create a road that, the road's not in great condition today, so we know improvements need to be had. But what's the balance and what those improvements need to be? And that's really what we've been spending our time previous to this now is kind of coming up with that balance. We talked it over at a city council meeting recently and got some direction from the council, and we're moving forward. So I do think a design contract's coming up in August to finish a design on that project. I think we're going to primarily keep the element of it just being a residential road, but it'll be a improved road, nicer surface, nicer driving lanes, and we'll add some better sidewalks, fix some drainage, kind of that stuff. So we'll say a nicer neighborhood road is going to be the ultimate goal out of it, but we're about to start the full design on it next month.
Two intersections, 79th at Kenosha and Houston. I'm not familiar with 79th Street. What's happening with these bays and that sort of thing?
Oh, I was confused for a second. Midway.
Midway Road. Yeah, that's right. Well, it's funny because 79th, I kept thinking of 81st, 91st, what we traditionally call, but you're right, it's Midway.
Yeah, you had me confused for a second. We talk about all the names for roads.
That's right.
I don't think, once you get out east, I don't even know all three of them.
The residents get confused from time to time, so do we.
Yeah, that's why when we're talking, I try to, as much as possible, say two different names because I want to use the Broken Arrow name, but I understand most people watching this probably only know the numbers, so
absolutely
try to repeat myself as much as I can. Midway, Kenosha, and Houston. This is part of the last bond package. It's just funding for intersection improvements. Traffic counts are increasing. They're out there, but we're not talking the same level of roads of like these 5-lane sections that we have everywhere else. It's really kind of going back to that Washington and Lynn Lane issue, the turn movements, everything else. I think the goal on these is going to be improve the intersections, get some wider lanes, get protected turn movements and all that, so we're just not having delays at the intersection. But that's what those projects are all about, is making sure that we at least have protected left turns at all directions. Currently, like Kenosha especially, does have turn lanes going in the east-west direction, but it's making sure that we also have them in the north-south direction and just getting people through the intersections faster. We're not super far in these projects. We are actually just starting the design, but it's something that's starting that process. We'll get through the process, and in a couple of years, you'll probably see us out there improving the intersections.
And then we'll wrap this up with the residential street rehabs. We had about $25 million allocated in the 2018 bond for these. Give us a status update on them. I know your team has been working very big time on this. And so just where do we stand as far as these are concerned?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I know a lot of citizens are too, because we talk about traffic, roadways, it's an emotional thing. You know, it's one thing to hear like, hey, I'm improving this road in the northeast part of town, south part of town, and then, you know, citizens are like, what about the road in front of my house? You know, like talk about all these other things when I'm driving over busted up concrete roads just to get into my house. And that's what I love about this is it's the funding to actually just go improve the residential roads. As a growing community, we have a lot of nice new neighborhoods, a lot of nice new areas, but you also got those old areas that were built to standards in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and they're getting some wear and tear on them. They're running out, and the standards they were built to are not the standards that we operate under today. You know, we build them things to a little bit nicer level today. And so what I love that the last bond did, as you said, put $25 million in there for just the rehab of those old neighborhoods. We have a lot of them on the list. We've already tackled quite a few of them. I think in the last year alone, we've gotten out about $8 million worth of work, and we have at least another $12 million in the hopper ready to get moving. And just our goal is to impact as many neighborhoods as we can, get their roadways up to design standards that we would expect, and you know, just make people's neighborhoods better. I think this is one of the greatest projects that are in the bonds. I'm excited that currently, you know, we're anticipating another lump of money just like this in the next bond vote, and you know, assuming that passes, we'll just keep tackling more and more neighborhoods. So.
Yeah, these are fantastic. I know currently we just we have Turtle Creek, the phase 2 part on that, Brentwood, Meadow Heights. We just completed Stone Mill. Our Streets and Stormwater Division just completed Hidden Springs, which is just south of New Orleans Square. And then at the City Council's July meeting, they just awarded another construction contract for Carriage Crossing.
Absolutely.
So it's just fast and furious, it seems like, and it's just we're getting a lot of great feedback from the residents. And we know there are others out there, and we know there are some folks that have reached out to us. What about my neighborhood? What about this one? And that sort of thing. We've got a PCI, a pavement condition index that kind of helps us determine. Is that right? Which ones we do?
So I believe we do the scans of our streets currently on like a 5-year cycle, but we update it periodically in between the 5 years, and we basically get a ranking. For those that aren't familiar with it, I think like 90 into 100 is basically brand new. 80 to 90 is in the very good range. 70 to 80 is in the average to good range. And then you get into the 60s, you're into poor, and below that, very poor. Our average remains around the 70-ish area. It kind of goes up and down, but that's above national averages. It's above state averages. So we actually have a pretty good rating overall. And but it's just it's a cycle. You know, it's just, you know, build new ones, but old ones are getting worse, and it's just kind of going through that cycle. So as you said, we rank all of our neighborhoods. We have a pavement condition index number for every residential neighborhood out there, and we go with the worst ones and work on improving them, and then move our way up the list, and just hit as many as we can with the dollars that we got available, always planning out. I'd encourage people that are watching this podcast or see us in other places, you know, comment in the comments section, ask, and we can tell you which neighborhoods are currently on the list and where they're supposed to be. But our goal is to always get to as many of them as we can.
Man, this has been a great conversation. Very informative. Appreciate you taking the time to give us a little bit of insight into the capital improvements that we've got as far as our streets are concerned. Thanks, Charlie.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to talk about it.
Can't wait to see you behind the wheel. I think we've got one coming up.
Look forward to it.